Why are some parts of women's anatomy named after men? Have you ever wondered why certain parts of women's anatomy carry names that reference men? This naming trend has deep historical roots that reflected the perspectives of the past. For many centuries, the male body was seen as the standard or default when it came to anatomy. Early anatomists and physicians, who were predominantly men, studied the human body through this male-centric lens. As a result, female anatomy was often viewed as a variation of male anatomy, rather than as something distinct and unique. In ancient times and during the Renaissance, a theory known as the one-sex model was widely accepted. This theory suggested that female genitalia were essentially smaller or inverted versions of male genitalia. For instance, the vagina was thought of as an interior version of the penis, and the uterus was seen as an inverted scrotum. Because of this perspective, many female organs were named in relation to male anatomy. Early physicians, like Galen, used the same terms for both male and female reproductive parts. This reflected the idea that female organs were homologous but considered inferior versions of male organs. Another factor contributing to this naming convention is that women historically had limited access to medical education and scientific research. Most anatomical discoveries and naming were done by men, leading to a situation where many female-specific body parts ended up being named after male anatomists or using male-based terminology. This reinforced the male-centered view of the human body. It wasn't until the late 17th century that anatomists began to recognize female anatomy as fundamentally different and worthy of its own study and terminology. However, the legacy of male-centered naming still exists in many parts of female anatomy. For example, terms like clitoris and uterus are linked to male terminology, reflecting the historical biases of earlier periods. In summary, the reason some parts of women's anatomy are named after men or use male-based terms is due to a combination of historical perspectives. Early anatomical science was dominated by male anatomists who viewed the male body as the norm. The one-sex model conceptualized female anatomy as a variation of male anatomy. Women were excluded from medical research, leaving naming rights to men. This history explains why many female anatomical parts carry names linked to men, reflecting cultural and scientific biases rather than biological reality.